Hi, I'm Dr. Scott Conkright. What if your body is holding memories your mind can't access? We explore how early relationships shape your nervous system and how healing it begins through relationship, not just insight. Tune in now. Your body has something to say. From the moment we are born, we are immersed in narrative. Before we can speak, we gesture. Before we form memories, we feel patterns. We are, in essence, born storytellers. And as we grow, we don't just tell stories, we become them. Our lives are shaped by a collection of internalized scripts which form our understanding of feelings, relationships, and purpose. In affect relational theory, art, these scripts begin as embodied blueprints for handling core feelings like interest, joy, fear, and shame, and evolve into the emotional and relational narratives that guide our lives. Some stories end well, others end prematurely. Some go through endless rewrites, but all of us live our lives inside stories. Not necessarily the ones we choose, but often the ones we inherited, rehearsed, and repeated. It occurred to me that, particularly in our media saturated world, many people understand their emotional lives through the metaphor of movies. Think about how often we hear phrases like, "It felt like I was in a horror film," or "I didn't audition for this role," or "It was a Disney fairy tale come true." These aren't just poetic turns of phrase. They are core feeling truths. They reflect how storytelling structures have become our way of making sense of experience. This metaphor isn't just useful, it's neurologically appropriate. The brain is wired for narrative. And when we use familiar structures like scenes, acts, and roles, we activate our innate ability to self reflect and evolve. When I began developing the four foundational relationships, I noticed something surprising. Each of these relationships has a natural parallel in the movie making process. If you view your life as a film, sometimes messy, mostly improvised, occasionally Oscar worthy, then these relationships form the production crew that supports its unfolding. You are the central character in your life story, or at least you should be. Many of us have handed that role to someone else, to a parent, a partner, a persona. But no film works when the lead actor is out of sync with the story. Acting, in its deepest form, is not about pretending, it's about inhabiting a role with honesty. That same skill is required in real life, especially in intimate relationships. The more emotionally intimate the setting, the more authentic your performance must be. But this kind of presence doesn't come naturally. It must be cultivated. From my experience, group psychotherapy, which I'll detail in a later chapter, is the best rehearsal space I know. It provides live feedback, real emotional stakes, and real time relational improvisation. There, we practice emotional honesty, increase our tolerance for relational discomfort, and expand our ability to adapt to new circumstances. In sum, the full actor's toolkit. Every film needs a script, but most of us are living scripts we didn't write. We are ad libbing someone else's expectations, recycling old plot lines, or editing ourselves out entirely. The second foundational relationship is to meaning. And meaning is what emerges when we begin to consciously write our story. Life rarely sticks to the script. That's why improvisation matters. As any theater veteran knows, if an actor gets sick or a set malfunctions, the story must go on. Improv isn't chaos, it's adaptive authorship. Similarly, your relationship with meaning demands resilience, creativity, and a willingness to embrace messiness. Ask yourself, what is the genre of my life story? Is it tragedy, a romantic comedy, a coming of age road movie? Well, more importantly, why would anybody want to watch it? Why would someone choose to be in it? You are not only the protagonist, but also the script doctor. The more honest your story, the more compelling your life becomes. With Pillar 3, your relationship with money, in the role of the producer, no movie gets made without one. No movie gets made without a producer. They manage resources, set budgets, and decide what gets greenlit. In your life story, money plays the producer's role. It doesn't determine your worth, but it does shape your options. Your emotional relationship with money, which includes such issues as scarcity, abundance, fear, and economic freedom, dictate how you allocate your time, energy, and attention. Many people outsource this relationship, assuming it's purely logical or external, but it's not. It's affective. You are investing in scenes that bring you joy. Or are you? Are you not? Are you funding scripts that reflect your values or not? Are you spending every dollar an hour trying to keep someone else's production afloat? To take back your producer role, you must start making financial choices that support your plot. This doesn't mean extravagance, it means alignment. Pillar 4, your relationship with others, as the casting director. This takes place once you've clarified your role, your script, and your production resources. Then it's time to cast your film. Too often, we do this in reverse, inviting people into our lives before we know what kind of story we're telling. This leads to miscasting, plot incoherence, and emotional genre mashing. Your relationship with others depends heavily on the first three relationships. Without clarity on who you are, what matters to you, and what you have to offer, your choices in connection will be reactive, not conscious. Being your own casting director means learning to discern who enhances the story, who drains its energy, who deserves a recurring role, and who was only meant for a cameo. This isn't about coldness, it's about coherence. When you cast wisely, your life becomes not only more intimate, but also more alive. These four pillars aren't separate compartments, they are interwoven threads in the fabric of narrative living. They support one another, revise each other, and evolve in tandem. And when they align, they create a life that feels artfully lived. Perhaps not perfect, but profoundly yours. In what follows, we'll explore each of these relationships in depth. We'll move from theory to practice, from metaphor to method. And as we do, I invite you to think of yourself as both artist and artifact. You are both the one telling the story and the story being told. Too often, the voices that echo in our minds are not our own. They are composite echoes of parents, teachers, social norms, and cultural scripts. To build an honest relationship with ourselves, we must learn to recognize and separate those inherited voices from our authentic inner voice. This means cultivating discernment. Which voice inside me wants safety? Which one desires adventure? Which one is afraid of disappointing others? Rachel's journey began not with action, but with listening. She started journaling each morning, not to perform or produce, but to tune in. At first, all she heard was noise, but with time, a clearer voice emerged, one that remembered painting as a child, one that longed for slow mornings, one that quietly asked, is this truly what I want? In art, this process can be understood through the lens of affective authorship/core feeling scripts. These scripts are patterns of emotional expectations and behavior formed in early relationships. Rachel had internalized a script of conditional approval. Love and safety came when she achieved, performed, or took care of others. Rediscovering her own voice required disrupting that script and writing a new one based not on external approval, but on internal resonance. Many people have an active inner critic, but no inner companion. A crucial step is learning to talk to yourself the way you would someone you love. This shift from judgment to companionship requires intention. What would it look like if your self talk were infused with curiosity instead of condemnation? Rachel practiced this by creating a compassionate response journal, writing two entries side by side, one from her inner critic and one from her inner companion. Over time, the latter voice gained strength and influence. Clinically, this transformation is a hallmark of affective restructuring. In art, the goal is not simply to change thoughts, but to shift the felt sense of self. The inner critic is often powered by shame affect, an abrupt interruption of positive core feelings and reinforced by scripts of perfection or inadequacy. By cultivating a companion voice, patients can begin to metabolize shame, transforming it into humility, accountability, and self compassion. Consider Miguel, a man in his early 50s who entered therapy after several burnout episodes. His internal monologue was a punishing loop of not enoughs: not successful enough, not good enough as a father, not disciplined enough in life in general. And by identifying the origin of these beliefs in his father's stoic silence and harsh expectations, he began to see them not as truths, but as artifacts. With guided affective work together, Miguel started to differentiate guilt and emotion from shame and affect, and let in more and more moments of the affect of enjoyment, joy, and interest, excitement. After months of working together, he was slowly able to speak to himself with increased tenderness, especially in moments of failure. Failure still didn't feel good. I mean, how could it? But it wasn't taken as a shameful reflection of his overall self worth. Here are some practices for cultivating self connection. Mirror work. Spend 2 minutes each morning looking into your eyes in the mirror and asking, "How are you really?" This activates self recognition, which is a key element in affective development. Over time, mirror work strengthens the neural pathways associated with self regulation and visibility. It also softens the internalized gaze of judgment, allowing a more compassionate gaze to emerge. It may feel very odd at the beginning to look at yourself in the mirror, but try it. It's very, very powerful. The first example is Jordan, a 44-year-old executive who found this practice nearly unbearable at first. He would say, "I would look away. I couldn't bear my own eyes," he said. But with steady encouragement, he began holding eye contact for longer and longer and narrating what he saw: tiredness, resilience, vulnerability. Within 2 months, Jordan described feeling less fragmented. "I used to feel like I was two people, the performer and the person I hide. This helped me unify." In the second example, with Priya, a recently divorced woman in her early 50s, she used mirror work to reconnect with her body after years of feeling mildly dissociative. She began pairing the practice with gentle touch, starting by placing her hands over her heart while she spoke to herself. "It sounds silly, but it was like meeting someone I forgot I had loved," she said. The next one is the daily why. Choose one action from your day and ask, "Why did I do this?" Keep asking why until you uncover a value, a fear, or a desire. This process often leads to affective clarity. It also creates a bridge between automatic behaviors and intentional living. For example, Michael, a 59-year-old teacher, began this practice after realizing he was checking email late into the night. Initially, he justified it with, I need to stay on top of things. But after 5 whys, he uncovered a fear of becoming irrelevant, a fear rooted in being overlooked as a child. Understanding this allowed him to reclaim his evenings without guilt. It was insight, but it was affective insight. The second example with Leela, a yoga instructor, she used the daily why to unpack why she always said yes to subbing extra classes. Well, she would say, because I want to be helpful. Well, that led to because I don't want people to be disappointed. And finally, because I equate my worth with being needed. Once she saw that, she began setting healthier boundaries. With affect tracking, you note moments of interest, excitement, and enjoyment joy, the two positive affects. These are clues to your authentic self. Art posits that these two positive affects are foundational for vitality and authenticity. By mapping your affective highs, you begin to see patterns and possibilities that might have been suppressed by duty or by fear. For example, Derek, an accountant in his early 40s, realized he felt bursts of interest not during financial reporting, but when mentoring interns. He began carving out more space for doing mentorship, eventually leading to a shift in his career focus. It wasn't a leap, he said, it was a reorientation around what lights me up. In the second example with Anna, a mother of three, she began keeping a small joy log, as she called it, on her phone. At first, the entries were small: warm sunlight on her arm, a child's laughter, the smell of her favorite tea. After a month, she noticed she smiled more. I didn't change my life, I just noticed parts that I love. Self titration exercises. These are ones in which you gradually expose yourself to previously disowned parts of yourself. Allow yourself to feel your sadness, your desire, anger, or fear. Begin with manageable memories or situations and allow these parts to be witnessed without judgment. This gentle, intentional approach mirrors exposure therapy through an affective rather than cognitive lens. Thomas, in our first example, who had always hidden his grief after losing a sibling, began by listening to songs they used to share. The music stirred tears he had long suppressed. He practiced staying with the sensation for 30 seconds longer each time. Over time, his frozen sadness began to thaw, and he could talk about his brother without shutting down. Eva, in the second example, was a woman recovering from religious trauma. She used self-titration to reclaim her sensuality. She began by standing in silk robes before the mirror, then progressed to dancing alone. Each step was about reconnecting with a part of her she had shamed. It felt like I was inviting an exile back into my home. The next one is naming your affective defenses, identifying your go to avoidances, such as intellectualization, humor, people pleasing, hyperproductivity. These are often shame shields. Naming them with compassion is the first step towards releasing them. Ben, a physician, recognized his tendency to intellectualize feelings. In therapy, he practiced expressing his feelings before explaining them. This took a little bit of work between the two of us. Initially, he would say, this makes sense because of X, usually taking a very cognitive approach. Now he starts with, this makes me sad. I feel vulnerable. But he would also talk about how freeing it was to feel what he really feels. Now, Samara, in example two, is a nonprofit leader who recognized her compulsion to help others came from a fear of being unlovable. By naming her people-pleasing as affective defense, she stopped overfunctioning in her friendships. I thought if I stopped doing so much, I'd be abandoned, she said. Turns out, the real friends stayed and liked her even more. In art, shame is not a moral failure, but a biological signal, an interruption of positive affect when one suddenly feels exposed, self conscious, or disconnected. Understanding this changes everything. Rather than avoiding shame, we learn to read it as a signal that something precious is at stake: connection, joy, or self expression. Rachel's shame flared up when she tried to paint again for the first time in 20 years. This is stupid, she heard herself say. But instead of turning away, she stayed with the feeling, asking, what is this shame protecting? The answer? A fragile, beautiful part of herself that still longed to create. Through therapeutic work together, she came to understand that shame had become a guardian of her inner artist, not an enemy. This reframing gave her the courage to paint badly, to explore, and ultimately to reclaim joy as her birthright. Her painting did get better over time. It had been 20 years, but she did get better. Late adolescence is the life phase where these questions become urgent. Who am I beneath the roles I've played? What do I want to carry forward? What must I lay down? This is the age of narrative reauthorship. It's not about reinvention in a careerist sense, but about reclaiming the felt narrative of your life. In therapy, patients in late adolescence often enter with a vague dissatisfaction. I should be happy, but something is missing. What's missing is often themselves. Cynthia, a 52-year-old social worker, had raised two kids and built a stable career, yet she felt numb. Through therapy, she uncovered a pattern of emotional suppression rooted in childhood. Her mother had been volatile. Cynthia learned to disappear in moments of conflict. As an adult, this had turned into chronic self erasure. Her therapeutic work involved not just insight, but expression: dancing, crying, yelling in the car. She described it as getting reacquainted with the person I might have been. This is the crux of late adolescence. Not becoming someone new, but becoming someone true. So be sure to subscribe and follow along. And if you're curious where you are on your own growth journey, take the free self-discovery snapshot at scottconkright.com. You can also join our newsletter for weekly insights and learn about upcoming therapy groups, meetups, and live workshops. Until next time, be kind to the part of you that felt everything first.